Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for June 26th through July 2nd. My name is Cam White. If you don't know me already, we have quite a bit going on this week. There's a lot of action, not too many major transits. Well, there is one major transit that we're starting the week off with, but everything else is just all of these little movements that are going to kind of build up momentum as we go into July. Anyway, for everyone that bought the transit calendar over on my website, thank you guys so much for all the support. Let me know in the comments how you guys like it. I've already gotten a lot of feedback that people are really enjoying it. If you don't know already, you can go over to my website and you can purchase a transit calendar for your iCloud account or for your Google Calendar. It's going to be custom to your birth chart. It's going to let you know what events are hitting your birth chart and what exactly they mean for the next 12 months. It's really handy. I've actually been I know my chart. I know what transits I'm going through, and I still really enjoy it because I've got it here on my phone as well. But also, Parker wanted me to let you guys know, if you haven't received your calendar yet, check your spam folder. That might be lost up in there. And check for info@camwhiteastro.com. You might have needed to confirm your birth time. So when we first started it, the birth time thing that we had, where you put your time, was a little off. So we might need you to confirm that. So just make sure you check your spam folder if you haven't received it already as well. If you have received it, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you haven't checked it out yet, go to my website, check it out. It's only $20. It's going to support me and my channel as well. It's a really awesome tool and really handy. And everyone I've talked to so far that's had it says they really, really enjoy it. So let's get started. So we're starting Monday off with the moon just kind of hanging out in Libra. It's not really doing anything on Monday. The moon is not void, and a void moon means the moon is not making any other aspects to a planet before it leaves a zodiac sign. So the moon just freshly entered into Libra, but it's not really making too many aspects on Monday. So that's not necessarily like a bad thing or a weird thing, but with the moon being in Libra, there's kind of like this need to have some balance, to, have everything kind of figured out, really be attentive to our relationships. But because there's this long delay before it aspects any planets, there could be kind of this weighing anxiousness or anxiety of what's next? Who do I need to speak to? When the moon is not making aspects, it kind of feels like you're just not doing anything, that there's no action, and that can kind of leave you restless. But I think with the moon in Libra, it's just hey, enjoy the moment where not too much is going on. The problem with me saying that, though, is also on Monday, we have kind of a big transit going on, and that's going to be Mars squaring Uranus. I would have ended last week with Sunday night being the Mars square Uranus, but I really feel like it's going to continue into Monday morning. And here's the deal. We have Mars in Leo, right? Mars is going to be fights, conflicts, irritation, inflammation, our action, our energy. And as it squares Uranus, it's really unpredictable. It's very explosive. It's very destabilizing. And as Mars is in Leo, right, we're wanting to fight with courage. We're wanting to be brave. Sometimes it becomes a little egotistical, or sometimes we just need to get things that are off of our chest and kind of a lion sometimes needs to roar to let other people know that it's the lion and it's going to fuck you up. The problem is it's squaring Uranus, and Uranus is liberation. You could call it independence. You can call it instability. You can call it a shock. You can call it just very random, chaotic events. And so on Monday, again, everything's kind of a two-way street. There could be this energy of just saying, fuck it, I'm going to take this action right now. And it really shakes everything up. And maybe some of you need your lives to be shooken up a little bit. Maybe you need to take a sort of action to shake things up. Maybe everything's been stagnant. For other people, if you're hoping for stability, if you're hoping for things to not change, you're living the wrong life. Change is the only constant in this universe. And what I love about this Mars-Uranus square is this is going to give us insight to dramatic changes, right? What's nice about astrology, it's hey, I know that the universe changes all the time. I know that it's the only constant. I know that life is cyclical. And this gives us the insight as to what cycles are repeating, where they're repeating at, and, when are the changes going to be happening? And that might be what Mars square Uranus is for you. There might be this sudden change that you really weren't expecting that could hamper your pride a little bit. It's Mars in Leo, right? Mars in Leo wants the glory. Mars in Leo wants to be seen in the best of light. Mars in Leo reminds me of the glory of war. It reminds me of the Roman triumph. If you're not into Roman history, I'd really recommend watching this channel called Historia Civilius. It's my favorite Roman history channel. But in the Roman triumph, they, if they pillage a city or whatever, they take all of their, all of the slaves, and they take, all of the gold and all of the jewelry that they, stole. They paint this artwork, and it's kind of this look at the what we can get from war. Look at the conquest that we just did. And, of course, us interpreting that today is going to look different than how they interpreted that back then. But it also reminds me of, there was one of the Roman triumphs, one of Julius Caesar's triumphs actually kind of went chaotically because, Julius Caesar wasn't really the best person. And so it's like when you're showing off, when you're, being pompous about things, not everyone's going to always like that. And it could shake things up a little bit. It's your job to understand that not everything's going to go according to plan, and that, it's not that like you just kind of have to let it go and be inevitable, but you can't always change outside circumstances. You can only change how it affects you. And so again, if you're just holding on for everything to be the same and to never change, like, this is going to be really rough. But if you, kind of rise above it and say, hey, like, this just is what it is. Like, if you get in a car accident, you can you get hit by someone, you can be angry, you can be pissed, and you would be right to do so. But are you going to just sit in that? Or are you just going to go, you know what? It is what it is. I have to rise above it because I can't let that negative energy affect me and everything else that I've got going on in my life. I've got to just roll with it and figure it out as I go. So Mars squaring Uranus is like maybe taking sudden action to just really shake things up, or sudden change really affecting you and kind of throwing you in a whirlwind. You just have to let it be. The other thing that's going on Monday is Mercury's ingressing into Cancer. This is our second highlight of the week. We have a lot of highlights this week. And as Mercury ingresses into Cancer, Mercury is about the way that we communicate, the way that we speak, the way that we understand information, the way that we digest information. I actually really like the word digesting information for Mercury and Cancer. But it's also our ideas and how we plan and how we think rationally. And with it being in Cancer, this is the sign of the moon. This is the sign of emotions. This is the sign of, safety. This is the sign of, feeling nurtured. And as Mercury goes into Cancer, this is what our minds are much more, fixated towards. For the past 2 weeks, Mercury flew through Gemini, where it was just information, say this, say that. Everything went really quickly. But as Mercury goes into Cancer, there's sort of this inner reflection. Like, hey, maybe I need to speak from my heart. Maybe I need to say what I need to say. Now, as Mercury does go into Cancer, one of the major highlights we have this week is the Mercury Cazimi. And that's when Mercury conjoins the Sun. A Mercury Cazimi, and I'll talk about this here more in a moment, is like a sudden realization of huge clarity, a very big conversation happening, or a message being received. As Mercury goes into Cancer, this is kind of shifting our minds towards this eventual realization that we end up having this week. But as Mercury goes into Cancer, it's a big focus on what do we need to say? What needs do we actually need to take care of? If Mercury's our thoughts and it's in Cancer, it's it's connecting to our emotions, mind, body, soul connection, being like, all right, what does my heart need? What do my emotions need? What do I need to say? How can I relate? How can I be empathetic? And what's nice about this is we have the Sun in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer. We also have Saturn in Pisces. There's a lot of water stuff going on right now. So being in tune with your emotions, being in touch with them is kind of what the, astrology is saying to do right now. But we'll be talking more about Mercury in Cancer as we go on through this week. As we get into Tuesday, the only thing that we've got going on is the moon making a sextile to Venus and Mars. So like I said before, the moon on Monday wasn't doing much. By the time we get to Tuesday, it will make that sextile to Mars and Venus. And I mean, this is just being able to relate and share with other people, right? The moon in Libra is really connected to people, really connected to our relationships. Mostly our one-on-one relationships, but it's sextiling Mars and Venus. There's something about that moon, Mars, Venus sextile of hey, whoever I'm connecting to, whoever I'm relating to, is going to really give me some confidence. Mars and Venus are in Leo right now. So, for some of you that have been, single for a long time, maybe you just need to kind of shoot your shot a little bit. Maybe it might turn out a lot better than you thought it would. For a lot of people that have been struggling in confidence, this is a great time to share and relate to other people, because there's a lot of opportunity to gain more confidence through relating to other people. And it's not like someone's going to come up to you and say, you're the best, you're great, you're amazing. It's a sextile. It's you guys are just having a normal conversation, and then that just comes up and they might say something like, oh, you're really good at this, or I really admire you for X, Y, and Z. And that's going to install a lot of confidence. So Tuesday is a fun day in terms of just relating to people, conversation, feeling good, feeling confident. So I really like Tuesday. So as we move into Wednesday, we have a lot of lunar action. The moon's kind of going all over the place. The moon is going to enter Scorpio. It is then going to conjoin the South Node. It is then going to trine Mercury. It is then going to trine Saturn, and then it's going to go opposite Jupiter. So there's a lot of emotional whirlwind going on Wednesday. And one of the other highlights we have going on Wednesday is the sun is going to be making a trine to Saturn. So let's talk about this moon transit first. As the moon ingresses into Scorpio, I say it over and over again, pretty much once a month, because the moon goes into Scorpio once a month. It's like emotional turmoil. The difference with this moon in Scorpio transit is it's making like this grand water trine. I don't usually like to say like, oh, grand water trine, but it's so funny how the sun's going into Cancer, Mercury's now in Cancer, we have Saturn in Pisces, and now the moon's connecting all of these dots in the water signs. And as the moon's in Scorpio, like the moon is about our emotions, right? In Scorpio, it's like it's bringing up old pain. It's bringing up old resentments. Scorpio is underneath the surface, right? And so much in our lives, we can hide the pain that we have. We can hide the resentment that we have. We can hold on to these old grudges and we think that we let them go, but we don't because they still affect us. And as the moon's in Scorpio, it's going to immediately hit the South Node. We're almost done with the South Node being in Scorpio. And there's just something exhausting about it. Like, how long are we going to hold on to these old wounds? How long are we going to let these old wounds affect us? As the moon goes into Scorpio and conjoins the South Node, it is an excellent opportunity to let it go. And sometimes you just have to have a conversation about it. Like, there's certain situations where you're relating to somebody, you're having a very intimate, deep talk, and an emotional wound is going to come up. After you have that talk and you bring that up, the responsibility is on you for you to be able to move past that. You don't want to bring up a problem, bring it to their face, come to a solution, and then still hold on to that problem. It's your responsibility to let go of, the pain that brought. And the other part of that is it doesn't even matter if there's a solution. Like, you holding on to these old wounds only affects you. It doesn't affect the other person. And how long, like how worth it is it to hold on to old stuff? So I think as the moon goes into Scorpio, conjoins the South Node, there's something draining and exhausting about holding on. There's something just like, you're just tired of it. You're sick of it. The moon is then going to trine Mercury. This is an excellent time to have these conversations, like say what you need to say. Maybe that conversation is just with yourself of like, maybe what you need is to let go of this. Maybe what you need is to get rid of this pain and this resentment. And Mercury's in Cancer. Like, our minds are really focused on our emotions right now, really focused on relating, really focused on protecting. And so there might be a little bit of this defensiveness, right? And that's totally fine. But you've got to be the one that takes your armor off. You got to be the one that takes off your shields and allow for that vulnerability to get deep down in there. The moon will then trine Saturn after it trines Mercury. And the thing is here, Saturn's in Pisces, like what we have to be responsible of, maturity, discipline, restriction. It's in a fluid sign. It's in a spiritual sign. There's something, I could sit here and say there's something spiritual about it, but what I would more like to emphasize is, and this is something I've kept saying, like, I've been meaning to make another delineation episode about this, about a crisis of faith. Saturn and Pisces, if you're just with Pisces, it's like, if you just kind of believe that, everything's going to work out and all this kind of stuff, that's typically like Pisces stuff. With Saturn, there's a wall there where it's not as easy to believe. And you really have to do your due diligence. You really have to apply like the faith that you have. And I think as the moon leaves that trine to Mercury and trine Saturn is this kind of understanding of what that needs to look like. Like, hey, maybe I don't know what my next step is, or maybe I don't know what my eventual path is, what my eventual end is, but maybe I just know that this right now is my next step forward. And that next step is like releasing that emotional pain, letting it go, rising above it, because it's just, when you just hold on to it, it brings your frequency so low. And it's not, none of this stuff is easy. But the other thing I just heard the other day is no one told you it had to be easy, but no one told you it had to be hard. It's your decision of whether or not you want to make it easy or you want to make it hard. And trust me, that's not, you're talking to someone that I love making it hard for myself for no reason. So that's why I'm sharing this with you, because that really, hit home for me. After the moon trines Saturn, it's going to go opposite Jupiter, where when it comes to oppositions, again, they're literally two parties that are at complete odds with one another. Jupiter and Taurus is like Look at the beautiful flowers that are growing. Look at the abundance that is around you. Look at how your faith and your process and just, taking things one step at a time is working out. And that moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter is kind of like, it's not easy to just flip a switch. Like after you go from pain and, putting salt on the wounds or cleaning up your wounds, you can't just go magically like, oh my God, everything's better. But I think as the moon goes opposite Jupiter, there is this level of looking at what's around you and asking yourself, like, in order to create this abundance around me, in order to create the life that I want to live, like Jupiter is all about faith and belief, right? And abundance. And it's in Taurus, value, security, just natural beauty. The moon in Scorpio opposite it is like, you cannot have a beautiful tree. You cannot have a beautiful rose bush unless those roots are healthy. If those roots are damaged, if those roots are, filled with poison, that plant's not going to grow. And I think the moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter is an excellent look at like, because again, if you're trying to, start your own business or be successful here or have better relationships, that's all the Jupiter and Taurus stuff. But you can't get any of that unless like you fix what's on the inside. You fix what's hidden. Like if you have all this resentment for other people in your life, like men or women, and you're trying to have a healthy, positive relationship, you're not going to get one. You've got to do that deep work on the inside. And I think the moon going opposite Jupiter is like the time to really reflect on like, are my roots planted in like fertile soil for my, flowers to grow? And there might be a realization where you go, oh, no wonder why my plants aren't growing. My soil's been, there's poop in the water. So that may not be an easy realization, but Wednesday is just full of emotions. The other thing that we've got going on Wednesday is the sun's going to make a trine to Saturn. The sun is our willpower. The sun is our, what is energizing us. And it's in Cancer, connecting to our emotions, being more empathetic, the sun in Cancer can be really defensive, but as it trines Saturn, there's this kind of like empowerment, this embodiment of like, hey, I'm doing the right thing. Saturn stuff, right? Like, where do you need to be responsible? Where do you need to be disciplined? What are the virtues that you need to learn? And that sun making a trine to Saturn is like, you stepping in that right path is going to bring more energy to you. It's like, when you do the right thing, I heard a quote the other day, and I'm always listening to personal development stuff, and I hear good stuff all the time, but this one has really stuck with me. If you're deciding between the easy thing and the hard thing, you should always choose the hard thing, because if the easy thing was the right thing, you would have done it already. And so I just feel like the sun trining Saturn is, if you do that hard thing, there's something energizing about it. When you do what you know is best for you, even if you don't want to do it, there becomes this strength in your own persona. There becomes this confidence like no other, because you showed yourself what you can do. You're able to, again, be virtuous. And this is what I love about astrology. It's showing us how and where and when to take on these virtues. And I just think the sun trining Saturn is an excellent day to do all this emotional work with the moon stuff and just allow that to energize you, allow that to strengthen you. So we get into Thursday, and the moon is going to first make a square to Venus, then it's going to go opposite Uranus, and then it's going to go square, and then it's going to square Mars. So this is another thing where just no one said it would be hard, but no one said it'd be easy. Also, and I think as the moon's in Scorpio making a square to Venus and Leo, when you go through, I've been talking a lot about like performance with Venus and Mars and Leo, and it's like you can have for example, like I haven't missed a weekly astrology since my dad died in 2019. And before that, it was like not until like 2018. So I've been doing this consistently for about 4 years now, not missing a week. So that's 200 something videos. There are days I don't want to do this. There are moments where I got my own problems going on. Like the reason I didn't do it when my dad was dying was because I just had zero time to do it. I had to like drop everything and focus on all that shit. But there were still times that I didn't want to do it, but I still did it. And the reason being is I knew that making these videos, talking to you guys, not only I know it uplifts you, but it uplifts me too. And how selfish of me to take that away from you because I don't feel good. And I'm bringing this up because as the moon goes, while the moon's in Scorpio making a square to Venus and Leo, it's like, you can be like, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be on camera. I don't want to do all this because I'm emotionally upset. It's like, you need to do that thing because that is the thing that is going to uplift you out of that pain. Like I tell people this all the time. I love talking to you guys through client work, Because I can be going through a shit time in my life, have a shit day, and the second I get out of my own self and I focus on someone else and helping them, I immediately lift my spirit up. I immediately get out of my bullshit and I feel awesome. Like after I do a fucking awesome consultation, it doesn't matter what just happened to me. I feel great. I feel ready to conquer everything. And so with the moon making that square to Venus, it's like, I don't care if you don't want to be seen. I don't care if you're that upset. You need to do it anyway, because it's going to be the thing that uplifts you. And this is the Venus and Leo stuff, right? Like, where do you want to be seen? Where do you want to be recognized? How do you want to be valued? And then the moon is going to go opposite Uranus. So the moon opposite Uranus is funny with just this specific transit, because as the moon goes opposite Uranus, it's like this instability, this kind of like uprooting of things. And I feel like the moon making a square to Venus is like, I don't want to go on stage, but fine, whatever. The moon goes opposite Uranus, and it's like there's something just literally uprooted from you. Like it's just easier to transmutate that energy. The only issue I see is the moon's going to make a square to Mars. And it doesn't, if you talk to an artist or like a musician of any sort, they'll tell you, you'll watch them in the audience, they'll say, that was your best performance ever. And they'll sit here and say, no, it wasn't. That was awful. That sucked. It's easy to be a perfectionist and it's easy to see your own faults. But I look at this as you might do your best performance and you may not even know it because you're going to be too hard on yourself. So on Thursday, I need you to get out of your comfort zone, do it anyway, and you will feel a lot better, but you will also say, I could have done better. I didn't like the way that this went. I didn't like the way that that went. And you're going to have to just kind of like not have that mindset for a minute. Like just look at it as a win. As a win is a win. You can't say, oh, I just, I killed on stage, but this wasn't good enough and that wasn't good enough and X, Y, and Z. You kind of just have to say, I did the job. I did what I needed to do. I need to move on. And that's sometimes how I do in consultations. Like I'll have a great consultation. I'll kill it. And then I'll come back and I'll just be like, maybe that wasn't good. That wasn't good. But I'm like, you know what? I helped that person. I did this video. Like as someone who does YouTube for a living, I did this for like 6-7 years now, maybe even 8 years. I tell people all the time, you're like, not every video is a banger. Not every video is great. Not every video is going to be amazing. But there's sometimes where I go, I didn't like that weekly. I didn't do well. And I still get comments that are like, that was amazing. This was like your best one yet. And it was so great. And so it's not up for me to judge, right? Like, and me just sitting in my bullshit of like, that wasn't good enough. Like that doesn't help me and that doesn't help you. So I have to be the one that just says, you know what? It wasn't my best, but I'm going to do better on the next one. I'm going to do better on the next one. And I keep continuously progressing. That's what's gotten me success is I've never stopped. So many of you guys just stop because you didn't see success the first time and you didn't progress. You didn't take, like, it's like some of you will just like you'll do one thing for the first time, have a bad reaction and never do it again. Like I did YouTube for like 2 years before I ever saw anything from it. And I had horrible videos. I was doing one every single week. That's like over 100 videos that sucked, but I still did it because I took the feedback and I learned. I got out of my own way and I just learned and progressed and progressed. You just have to progress. If you don't like the performance that you had on one, just take that and do better next time. Continuously progress, learn. That's what I want you guys to do on Thursday. Friday, we have a lot going on. Friday, the moon is going to make a trine to Neptune, right? So a little delusional, a little bit idealistic, a little bit of bad, a little bit of good. But then the moon is going to go into Sagittarius and square Saturn. The other thing that we've got going on is Mercury is going to make a trine to Saturn, and we have the Mercury Cazimi. It's not a whole lot going on, but it's an interesting combination of energy because I think as the moon trines Neptune, there is this kind of like, again, everything's a two-way street with this. It's like idealizing our pain or idealizing, like, something that I do is like pain and, my problems are some of the biggest motivations. Like some of the biggest motivations I've had to stop doing something was the pain that it brought me. And just being like, I don't ever want to feel this way again. I don't ever want to deal with this again. That was so bad that I make it out worse than maybe what it was, just so I don't have to experience it. Because if you just have a bad experience and you go, oh, that wasn't that bad, you rub it off, well, then it's going to be easy for you to continue that cycle. When you have a bad experience and you tell yourself, that was horrible, I don't want to do that again. You like, I don't want to say romanticize, but you like saturate yourself in that negative energy and say, that's not what I want to be. You use that as like a emotional like memory to say, that was my lowest. I don't want to go back there. And so the moon trining Neptune can be really good for that, of just looking at that pain and being like that, using that as fuel and motivation to not do that again. But as the moon goes into Sagittarius and there is this like yearning for freedom and adventure and fun, it's going to square Saturn. Again, wherever you go, there you are. There is no running away and doing this and doing that. The work is right in front of you. And so, like, I think as the moon goes into Sagittarius, this is immediate feeling of being like, cool, I'm free from that. What's next? I'm wanting to have fun. But the moon's making a square to Saturn in Pisces is like, if you don't want to experience that again, it's not about running away from it. You got to do the work right here, right now. And so what is good about the moon making a square to Saturn is that's that like hardcore realization that, hey, this work needs to be done internally, not externally. The world is as you is, not as you think it is. Or what's the saying? The world is not as it is the way it is you. Fuck, I can't say this. The world is not as it is. The world is as you are. Meaning, if you're negative, the world's negative. If you're positive, the world's positive. And there's some true shit there. A lot of you are going to disagree with me and say, no, the world is blah, 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 blah. And you're talking to someone like, trust me, I have a lot of views of the world that I would deem as negative, but my challenges of late, and I hope you guys have seen this, is like, I need to rise above that because that negative energy and sulking in it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't do anything for the world around me. But the thing that will is rising above it and seeing the bigger picture, seeing what things can turn into. On Friday, Mercury is going to make a trine to Saturn. Mercury being about our ideas, communication, our mindset, logic. So trine Saturn, there's that connection. If I connect more with my emotions, this is me doing the virtuous work that I need to do. This is me trusting my process. This is me trusting my faith. This is me being blindfolded and taking one step at a time and just trusting that I know where I'm going. And then we have the Mercury Cazimi. And there's two types of Mercury Cazimis. There's the Mercury retrograde Cazimi, which is when the sun, is when Mercury is in between the sun and the earth. And that's when Mercury is retrograde. Then there's the exterior Cazimi. This is when Mercury is on the other side of the sun. It's moving forward. We have like all of our ideas and our plans are like in motion. But when Mercury is like retrograde, everything's like in our face. It's like, oh, my phone's broken, or oh, I got a flat tire. It's all these problems in our face. Mercury as an exterior Cazimi is on the other side. We're thinking a lot more long term now. We're thinking in a bigger picture way. And as it conjoins the sun, there's that clarity. There's that light bulb moment of like, this is what I needed to realize. We're talking about Cancer here. So we're talking about our emotions. We're talking about our gut. We're talking about our intuition. And after Mercury trines Saturn and Mercury conjoins the sun and goes Cazimi, there is this like really revolutionary clarity of like, whoa, this is the work that I needed to do. This is how I needed to feel. This is what I needed to say. That's something I love about Mercury in Cancer is saying what you need to say. Maybe that's to another person, but sometimes that's also to you too. Just being straight up honest with yourself, listening to your emotions and listening to your gut and telling yourself the truth about that. So Friday's pretty interesting. This week's pretty interesting. Let's go ahead and move to Saturday. Saturday, the moon is going to make a trine to Venus and Mars. I'm really, 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 really looking forward to this this conjunction. This is July 1st. Not this conjunction, this moon and Sag trining Mars and Venus. And Mercury is going to make a sextile to Jupiter. So what's fun about Saturday is the moon's in Sagittarius. It's off of that square from Saturn. It's trining Mars and Venus. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, sometimes you just got to say what you need to say and it goes way better than you anticipated. And you feel this freedom and you feel this joy and you feel this confidence and you feel like you can do anything. That moon and Sag, this is also a Saturday night. This is a fun Saturday night. If you want to go out and party, this is a fun Saturday night to do it. Moon's going to be in Sagittarius. It's culminating to a full moon. It's going to be trining Mars and Venus, like going out, exploring, doing adventurous stuff. It's going to light up your confidence. It's going to make you feel like you're capable. It's going to make you feel like you're worthy. It's going to make you feel proud. It's going to make you feel ambitious. Saturday's really good energy. And Mercury's going to sextile Jupiter. As Mercury's in Cancer, and again, we're being more clear about how our emotions feel. We're being more mentally in tuned with our intuition and our emotions. As it sextiles Jupiter, we see the value in that. Like Jupiter in Taurus is like, again, slow and steady wins the race. What do we want to feel? How do we want to be sensual? What do we value? What is the slow growth? As Mercury sextiles Jupiter, it's like, you just see the bigger picture. Like that, again, like Mercury is more rational minded and Jupiter is more philosophical. And like Mercury sextiling Jupiter is like, for example, you ever had like an old person tell you something and you go like, what does that mean? Like, I don't get what you're talking about. It's like some old wisdom. And then you're living your life, you do your thing, and you kind of reflect and you go, huh, that's what that meant. Or there's some sort of connection where maybe you don't fully understand it, but you're starting to see the connection. That's Mercury sextiling Jupiter. Like, our rational mind, our more logical, our more like detailed mind is connecting much more with our philosophical mind, with our much more like about our beliefs and our spirituality. And there's this kind of like, okay, I'm starting to understand this process. I'm starting to understand what that faith looks like. Because there's a difference in like just having faith, and then there's a difference between like actually understanding that because you have the real world experience. And that Mercury sextile Jupiter is just connecting the dots of like, oh, wow, I get that now. Like, that doesn't just like make, you know, altruistic sense. That makes like rational sense to me now. So then we move into Sunday. And on Sunday, the moon is going to make a trine to Mars. So let me just follow up with Friday. The moon is going to make a trine to Venus all day long. And then it's not going to be until early Sunday, the moon makes a trine to Mars. So on Sunday, the moon will make a trine to Mars. It's going to square Neptune, and it's going to enter Capricorn, and it's going to sextile Saturn. A lot of moon stuff on Sunday. I think as the moon trines Mars, we could be feeling a little full of ourselves, but maybe that's okay. I think the moon and Sag shining Mars, it's like that's a lot of fuel and a lot of motivation just to keep going. And I think that's what people need right now. There's so much in the world that makes you feel like you can't keep going. You need to figure out a way to motivate yourself to keep going. The moon will make a square to Neptune, though. Where you're going, like, the journey is the destination. The moon making a square to Neptune is like the second you start thinking of like, oh, this is the ultimate goal. This is where I'm supposed to be. Like, I need to go to point B. I need to go to point C. You're not doing it right. You just have to take one step at a time. And the moon and Sag making a square to Neptune is like, there's all these possibilities of where you can end up and what can be. And then you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to, you know, spiral. You have to just say, all I need is the motivation and the willpower to take one step at a time. I don't need to figure out where point B is. All I need to do is take this step in front of me right now. The moon's then going to enter Capricorn. It's going to sextile Saturn. And we get into the full moon in Capricorn. So the full moon in Capricorn technically happens Monday, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit for Sunday night. I was talking about this over on my Patreon. So if you want to support the channel and if you want to get monthly rising sign horoscopes, I do a live monthly overview for the next month ahead. I do a live Ask Me Anything. I have a Discord. You get ad-free content, early release, and sometimes even bonus content. Check out my Patreon. It truly does support me, and I absolutely love having that platform to speak to you guys too. But I talked about this over on my Patreon about the live monthly overview. The moon in Capricorn is two things. This full moon in Capricorn. But as the moon goes into Capricorn, it sextiles Saturn. It's two things. One, there's a part of it that's like realizing how detached from our emotions we've been. How, like, because again, this is what I love about the full moon in Capricorn. The sun's in Cancer. We're lighting up our emotions. And then the ruler of Cancer, the moon, gets full. It gets illuminated. We see something, but it's in detriment. It's in Capricorn. And so the one way that this looks is like, how detached have I been? How not feeling, like how disconnected have I been from these like enriching emotions? But the other side of it is, and again, some of you might disagree with this, and that's fine, but this is some real shit right now. Sometimes you need to suck it up. You're going to go through all this emotional shit, right? This whole week. And then we're going to get to Sunday, and the moon's going to go into Capricorn. And there's a time to cry. There is a time to be emotional, and then there's a time to suck it up and get down to business. That's what this full moon in Capricorn is for. Get your emotions together. Feel what you got to feel, but you need to wrap it up by Sunday because you have work to do. You have a life to get to. You can't just, like, you know, as a guy, this is a little bit more pertinent. Like, this is a little bit more important because a guy can't just be emotional and sensitive and cry all the time. And a lot of you would disagree, but a lot of you, like, I'm just going to put it this way. There's a difference between what a man says a man has to do, and there's a lot of difference between what a woman says a man has to do. And I don't say that in a, like, sexist or misogynist way. But a man can't be emotional all the time. A man can't be a victim of his emotions. You can't be a victim of your emotions, whether you're a man or a woman. As the moon's in Capricorn, like if you just let your emotions control you, your emotions change every 5 minutes. You can be happy 1 minute and then read an Instagram post the next minute and be depressed. You've got to be the control of your emotions. You've got to think logically sometimes. You have to have a disconnect from those emotions in order to get the thing done that you need to get done. Sometimes hard things in life require you to not be emotional about them. And that's what this full moon is about. It's like, Again, one side of it could just be like, hey, like, God, I've been so disconnected from emotions. Like, why is that? Where are my walls? But the other part of it that I would think more of you are going to go through is like, it's time to suck it up for a minute and realize what needs to be done. Let's get serious about this. Let's, like, again, if your emotions are that important, why aren't you taking them seriously? Like, rather just be like, oh, I feel this way, I feel this way, I feel this way. It's like, I'm so sick of feeling all over the place that I need to overcome that and actually do something about that. So the moon's going to go into Capricorn and sextile Saturn and Pisces. This is good. This is the ruler of Capricorn. The ruler of this full moon is making a sextile to the other ruler. You don't have to be one way all the time. There's times to be emotional. There's times to be sad and cry. And there's other times where you've got to get down to business. The other thing that's going on Sundays, Venus is going to square Uranus. And this is so different from the full moon in Capricorn energy. This is what's so funny of it. Because Venus squaring Uranus, what I was saying on my Patreon video is like, it's like two different things. One, if you have been like with Venus and Leo wants to be seen, wants to be present. Like I on my Patreon video, I was talking about how like guys get so insecure. Like I've DJ'd a bunch of weddings and guys will get so insecure about dancing. Like they don't want to look dumb. And like for me, I'm like Venus in Gemini, Moon in Libra, Mars in Gemini. Like I fucking love dancing and I know how to dance. And so I don't have that problem with like not being afraid to look stupid. I think it's a lot more fun, but a lot of people do. And I look at Venus and Leo squaring Uranus and Taurus is like literally release your inhibitions. Don't like dance like no one is watching. Like I know that sounds so corny, but it's fucking real. Like some of you need to just like put yourself out there in a way and whatever happens, happens. I've looked dumb all the time before. One time, okay, I'll even share this story. One time at a wedding, this is so funny. This is when I first started DJing. I used to be able to do the worm really good as a kid. And for whatever reason, I thought that carried with me into adulthood. And I DJ'd this wedding and I went to do the worm and I just bam, just pancaked onto the ground and like totally smacked my face. It was really embarrassing, but I laughed it off. It was fun. Like Venus squaring Uranus is like, what do you want? What do you enjoy? And like, sometimes you just like, again, maybe you're just sitting there in the corner and everyone's having fun on the dance floor, but you're insecure, you're nervous. Sometimes you just have to bust out of that, break through that, go out and do that thing. Venus is going to square Uranus a few more times. I think the other part of it though is, again, I like something I've talked about with Venus and Leo squaring Uranus is like, you know, don't be like, I want to cut my bangs and like cut your bangs and be like, oh, that was a very impulsive decision. It's a very impulsive decision related to beauty, love, romance, sex, fun, arts, music. And for some of you, that's going to be a great impulse decision. For others, you're going to go, okay, like that's going to be some good feedback of like, okay, that wasn't maybe, you know, my best idea, but fine. Here it is. This is where I'm at. And we have a lot more to talk about with Venus square Uranus because we're not done with this yet. So as we get into next week, full moon in Capricorn is really on Monday. So we're going to come back to this topic next week. Then we have Mercury making a sextile to Uranus and Mercury trining Neptune next week. Mercury flies through Cancer. Next week isn't all that big of a deal, right? I would look at next week as a very chill out time between this week that we have going on and the week after that where we have much more going on. So with that being said, let me know in the comments what you guys are excited for this week. Let me know what you're not excited for this week. Again, go over to my website if you want to get the transit calendar for your phone. It's going to let you know everything that's going on in your chart, everything that's going on in your life, and it's going to give you good interpretations on what all that means. Again, support the channel if you want. Like, share, subscribe. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.